Welcome. We are so happy that you're all here, and I am grateful for the opportunity. My name is Bruce Strong. I'm the department chair for visual communications here at Newhouse, and we are thankful for the time that we have today to be able to speak with Michael Santiago, a Pulitzer Prize-winning photographer who came through Newhouse a few years ago before heading to Pittsburgh and now working for Getty Images. But before we start, I want to just say a couple of words to thank a few people. Amanda Griffin, who is the director of our external affairs and events and alumni engagement, and Brian Tibbins, who's the director of information technology, have both worked very hard to be able to get this event up and running for us today. And we just are grateful for your time and your effort. Thank you. I also would like to introduce you to our co-host for today's event, Mike Davis. Mike is currently the chair of the Alexia Tsairis documentary for the Alexia Tsairis Chair for Documentary Photography here at Newhouse. He has worked around the world for various publications. He's worked at National Geographic, in the White House. He has worked for a number of different newspapers. He's twice won Picture Editor of the Year. And I'm just grateful for him. He continues to work with professionals and students. And I don't know that I've ever worked with anybody who works as hard as Mike, as dedicated day in and day out, hour after hour at his computer screen, editing students and professional work, trying to elevate the quality of the stories that they're telling through events and books and exhibitions. I'm just grateful to be working with him, and I'm glad that you're able to join us today, Mike. Welcome.
Thank you, Bruce.
Today, we're fortunate to be able to be here with Michael Santiago. Michael came through and graduated in 2019. I'll tell you, his master's defense was an amazing project, and it was a great day. He defended on a Friday. On that same day, we had Shira Stoll defend her master's project. They both produced major bodies of work, and it was particularly exceptional in that by the following week, Michael won a Pulitzer Prize for his work at the Pittsburgh Post-Gazette, and Shira, 2 weeks later, won a New York Emmy up against NBC and everybody else for her master's project. So Michael, we're thankful. I'm not going to go too deep into your bio because I want you, that's going to be the first question, for you to give us a little context of how you got to Newhouse. But can you start and give us a sense of where you started?
Yeah, sure. Can you hear me?
Yes, go ahead.
Yeah, so pretty much the 2000s, I spent some time just basically working blue collar jobs and hopping from job to job. And then in like 2011, I decided to go back to school. I started at a community college, and oh, there we go. We got video now. I can't start the video though, so I don't know. I see you though, Bruce.
Okay.
But so I started in a community college, and then once I got done wrapped up with that, I bounced over to the West Coast, and there I am. So over in California, I did my undergrad at the San Francisco Art Institute, where I studied under Darcy Padilla, and she encouraged everybody to apply for the Alexia Foundation grant because she herself was a winner, and I did. And before winning that, I knew that I wanted to get into journalism, but I had no idea how to do it, nor did I feel that I was prepared because I was doing basically art photography. So I knew that I needed to continue with school, but I had no idea how I was going to pay for school. And then, by the grace of God, I won the student Alexia Foundation grant, and somehow you guys were able to finagle a way for me to stay there off, the entire time, and I just did my master's degree, and then that's pretty much where I got kind of like a good grasp of what it meant to do, to be a working journalist. Under Mike, I was able to learn how picture editing and what makes pictures strong, and how to write captions and how to properly, work in journalism. And then under you, Bruce, I learned how to incorporate video and audio into everything that I did. And then I also got the opportunity to work with Greg Heiser, who, I mean, everybody knows that Greg is a master lighter. So I learned my lighting from Greg. And that's kind of pretty much what led me to where I'm at now. After graduating from Newhouse, I was able to I spent a couple of months working in Phoenix at the Walter Cronkite School with the News 21 with the fellowship that I was able to get from Newhouse. And that there's my first time that I was able to like kind of work inside what a real newsroom looked like. And I got to work in more in investigative journalism. That's pretty much like gathered more love of journalism work for me. After I was done with that, I went back to New York City. I spent a couple of months here trying to freelance, and that didn't really work out for me, and I really had no idea what I was going to do. And then out of the blue, Mike David called me up, and he was like, hey, there's an opportunity for you, to go to work in Pittsburgh. Do you want to interview for it? And I immediately said yes. Being a Pittsburgh Steelers fan all my life, I was like, I absolutely would love to go work in Pittsburgh. And I interviewed for the job, and I got it.
It's amazing. There's so many memories in everything you just said. It's just.
I mean, it's all linear, and it all sounds like. I mean, I'm skipping over a lot of parts, and it does sound like things just came here and there, like right away. And honestly, really, it wasn't all that. Like I honestly, like I did have a lot of people help me out through the process. Between you guys there, people in my old school, and mentors that I met, family members, and my partner. But at the same time, like I worked my ass off. Can I say ass? I worked my tail off doing all the work. I don't think any one of you guys would have put your names behind me if you guys didn't see how much I worked. I lived and breathed what I was doing. And when I was going to school in Syracuse, I didn't have access to a car, and I didn't have access to a lot of money. So I was walking 1 or 2 miles wherever I needed to go to photograph sometimes. So I worked as much as I can. I did nothing but eat, lived, and breathed work.
It's been amazing too, in the time since you've left Newhouse. It's like you took your experience had been like compressed, and it's just like this massive element of change and evolution and understanding. While I was waiting for the video to come up, I was continuing to read Teju Cole book, and I got to this point, and he says, marginalized voices in America have fewer and fewer avenues to speak plainly about what they suffer. The effect of this enforced civility is that those voices are falsified or blocked entirely from the discourse. It seems like right now we're at a juncture in the journalism world to actually make some change, to make a more equal playing ground for people and for what gets put out into the world. Mm-hmm. You've been at the heart of that for the last couple of years, so I'm eager to hear your thoughts.
Yeah, I mean, but that's always something that I've always worked to do. Even when I got to Syracuse, people were saying, "Don't go to the South Side. The South Side is, you can get robbed there. People are getting shot. It's a bad place in Syracuse." And as soon as I heard that, I was like, all right, I got to go down to the South Side to see what's going on there. And I went there and I met some amazing people that I still talk to today. And it's just, it's just the South Side of Syracuse is just like one of those places that, every place in America has one of those places where, unfortunately, they see pockets of violence, but there's still a good amount of people there who are still doing good and trying to change the reputation of that neighborhood. And what I learned and what I took to Syracuse, I took to my own personal work. When I went to Pittsburgh, automatically I went to those neighborhoods that had that bad reputation, but I ended up looking for those good pockets of people and good things that happen in those neighborhoods. One of those things that happen, especially in newspapers, is that people in certain neighborhoods, they get used to seeing reporters and photographers go there whenever there's a murder or something bad that happens, but they're not used to seeing people go there when they're having community events. And I always made it a purpose in my work and to just go to these community events. Even when I wasn't working, I would go there on my own and just meet people so they can see me. And you know, it's one thing to go to neighborhoods and just to hang out in neighborhoods so people can see you. But it's one thing to go to those neighborhoods and actually engage with the community, engage with people. And that's how, you know, as a journalist, that's how you're going to earn the trust of the community. If you don't have that trust from the community, you're not really going to get anywhere.
I remember talking about, oops, go ahead, Bruce, sorry.
Well, no, that seems like it's the way you photograph protests and demonstrations is different than the way a lot of other photographers cover those things. And I think what you just said probably leads right into that. Can you talk a little bit about your philosophy in photographing demonstrations and going beyond just the news in front of you?
Yeah, and that honestly started just being in the class with Mike and having those discussions about photographing protests. One of the things that you know, me and Mike always talked about is that, you know, when you see a lot of protest images and what gets put out there, all you're seeing is protest images, and you're seeing signing, you're seeing people yelling, and the reason behind why people are protesting always gets lost. When you start engaging people and meeting people, you start to know who they are and who they are as a person, and then you start to see certain things about them, and with that, you're able to photograph them in a way where you're not always photographing them screaming and yelling. You're photographing some kind of actual visceral emotions coming from them. And then, you know, like if you become real familiar with a certain individual at protest, you can make that protest into a photo story revolving around just that one person. You know, if you don't know anybody who was protesting, go there early and see who's there, because people show up early, and you can speak to those individuals and ask them why they're protesting. People sometimes are there because they have a story. You know, they might have a cousin or a friend who they've lost to something to you know, whether that be state violence or community violence. People have stories, and you can revolve those protests around those certain individuals, and that's always what I tended to do. And one thing that I also do when I'm either photographing protests or photographing anything at all is that sometimes I spend a lot of time not photographing and just just watching people, watching the mannerisms, watching what they do. And that's how you can start to get some kind of, you start to like move away from just the angry emotion to more of a visceral and emotional emotion from people.
I remember you saying too that a few months back, as you were photographing things, the connections started to happen. Those threads that you've laid down start to weave together into different environments, and they let you entry into many more things than if you just show up.
Yeah.
Do you remember a specific circumstance where those kinds of things came together?
I mean, I would probably bring up when the murder of Antoine Rose happened, when protests started in Pittsburgh. I really didn't know anybody there. I hadn't known anybody by the time. I was only in Pittsburgh for like a month. And then once I started to meet people and start to meet individuals, what that allowed me to do is, you know, 2 years down now, you know, I can have a conversation with Antoine's mom. You know, when one of the last big things that I covered was the 2-year anniversary of Antoine's death, where they had a march, and they started at a certain location, and they marched to the location where Antoine was killed, and his mom was there, and I was able to go up to her and talk to her. I was able to talk to Antoine's sister. Antoine's niece recognized me, and she smiled at me, and we talked. You know, and that's kind of the things that happen when you start to meet people, and that happened for me, photographing the protests and actually engaging some of the organizers, some of the people there, because they were able to vouch for me that, you know, that I was a good person, you know. And also I wasn't just going to just a protest. I was going to different events that were happening. I mean, like I said before, like one of the big things to do is just go to community events where people are just celebrating life. It's one of the things that I know you guys remember when Chun Lee had said this during one of the talks at Syracuse. It's one thing to photograph protests and see Black Lives Matter all over and over again and see those signs, but it's one thing to actually go out and actually photograph Black lives actually mattering, you know, and that's photographing, folks of color just enjoying life and just being everyday people is the way that you're going to change the narrative about how outsiders can see us, you know.
I'm guessing you've been following the Photo Bill of Rights, part of which is like who's the best person to be behind the camera in certain situations. Like, is it better if you are Black to engage with a Black community because you bring experience? So what do you think about? What would you offer on that?
I can't say that not everybody. I lost my video. I don't know what happened. There we go. So not one person is the only person that should be photographing anything at all. Anybody can photograph something, but there are certain things that somebody who's familiar with the culture and the culture can get that somebody else isn't going to do. I mean, not only that, but there's also things that, I go back and talk about this now because it's a big thing now. The Annie Leibovitz photos of Simone Biles. You can't discredit everything that Annie has done. Annie, she's a legend of what she does. But those Simone Biles photos really weren't that great. Her skin tone was off, and you can tell that she was uncomfortable. I've seen Simone Biles photographed by Black photographers before, and you can tell how comfortable she was. And I mean, there's just certain things that you'll be able to see and understand when you're from the community. But that's not to say that nobody, white folks can't photograph Black people, but there's just certain things that you can get when you're from the community, from the culture. And going back to the Bill of Rights, one of the things that keep popping up over and over again about that Bill of Rights is the word consent. And I personally don't understand, what the big deal is over consent. And I truly understand that in certain news situations, you can't get consent from people and you have to just photograph, but you can certainly get consent from people just by talking to them. Going back to the Pulitzer from that I received from the Tree of Life shooting, all my images that have a person's name on it, I have their names because I got consent from them. Whether that was before photographing them or afterwards. Sometimes I'll ask people. It's not that hard to just be like, either ask, is it okay to photograph you, or just put the camera up and just kind of just give like a face nod or whatever. It's not that hard to get consent, At the same time, we're in the business of news, and if you're working for a publication, whether you're a staffer or a freelancer, and you photograph a certain person, and you turn that photo in without that person's name, your editor's going to get at you. And what's the best way to get that person's name is to get consent from that individual. So I really, truly do not see what the big deal is over this fight over the word consent.
Kind of thread there. If you aren't from a community, what's the burden on you as someone who's entering freshly into that space?
I mean, you just have to take it upon yourself to go into that community on your own time and meet people and engage with folks and talk to people. If you just think you're gonna just show up with a camera one day and start photographing and think that people are not going to feel standoffish against you, like you're doing this wrong. First of all, what are your intentions to go into to begin with if you don't want to understand or know people in the community? So I mean, one of the first things I do whenever I get to a new location is just, I find who it is that I need to know and meet them and talk to them and engage with them. Not only learn who they are, but I also want them to learn who I am and what my intentions are. It's a push and pull. I mean, I go into my work as it's a collaboration between myself and the people I'm photographing. And if they don't know me, if they don't know anything about me, they're going to be uncomfortable with me. And that's going to show in the images. And that all comes down to just talking and engaging people.
Michael, have you found our publications, how are they changing and adapting with that idea, what you just said? What have you seen and what should happen?
I mean, I don't know because I haven't truly worked for a lot of publications since I left Pittsburgh. It's only been 2 weeks, so I mean, I'm not exactly sure. I mean, what I would say is that just this past week, Vogue magazine had the first cover shot by a Black photographer in like over 40 years. And like you can look at those images of Viola Davis and compare that to what Annie Leibovitz did, and they're amazing. Not only does the Viola Davis skin look incredible, but that image was purposely photographed like that. And it was kind of basically a recreation of a famous image of an enslaved African who had his back scarred with by whips, and that was purposeful, and that goes to show what happens when you have somebody from the culture photograph somebody who's in the culture. It makes a big deal, and I think that everything that's happening now is kind of sort of brand new. So so I think hopefully a lot of other publications will start to come to terms with changing. I mean, we're photography is a diverse institution. The world is a diverse place. There's no reason why you shouldn't have people of different diversity photographing for you, especially when it comes to certain assignments. There's no, at this day and age, if an editor or a publication says we can't find somebody of color to photograph this person, then they're really not doing their job as an editor, to be honest with you. Because there's more than enough. You have diversified photo, you have women photograph, you have native, you have authority collectors. The resources are there for you to find the perfect people. So they really shouldn't be nobody should be saying I can't find the right person for this job, so I had to go with this person.
The critical first step would be, oh, I need to.
And that's all it is, and unfortunately, like you have a lot of editors who still have that, who don't have that ingrained into their head yet. So it's all about just, I mean, look at the steps that Brent Lewis has been doing to change his roster and putting himself accountable to who he hires. So there's no reason why there shouldn't be any diversity in your publications nowadays.
Having been there for a couple decades anyway, it's just a matter of changing the community, the people you're aware of. Mm-hmm. Yes, that takes effort for sure, but it's critical, it's vital, it's got to happen.
Mm-hmm. Michael, can you also talk a little bit, and we can keep looping back through both topics, but I'd be interested to hear what has it been like trying to tell stories, excuse me, in the way that you tell them during a pandemic? How have you gone? What does it take to do that? What advice do you have?
I would say the hardest thing is keeping my distance. We all, with this pandemic, there's a mandate that you have to be 6 feet away. My camera lens is always set at either 24 or 35. And because of that, I'm used to getting close to people. So that's been the toughest thing to do. And I can say that there's definitely been plenty of times where I've broken that 6 feet rule just because I needed to get closer. So that's been the toughest thing. And also like one of the ways that you can get the most intimate photos is being inside people's homes. And nowadays we can't really go inside people's homes unless they truly trust you. And that goes back to building those relationships and engaging with people, but either way, that's been the toughest thing for me. This is that distance and just making intimate photos. Because a lot of times it's hard to not make intimate photos when you can't get close. That's been the toughest thing. And also just, this is the pandemic, what's going on. It's like, we've never dealt with this before. We really, we learn new things from this every day. So honestly, just being outside is just scary. I spent like a good 2 months always having gloves on and washing my hands constantly. I'm still doing most of that now, but it's scary being outside, and just talking to people. You don't, because like we have to act like everybody's infected, including yourself. So it's just, and you have to change the way you work.
How do you go about identifying stories? Pandemic specific or otherwise, really?
I mean, for me, I go with what I'm most passionate about. And one of the things that I've always been most passionate about has been, I would probably say, income inequality and the reasons for that. So my work has always reflected that. Part of my thesis was that violence is a direct reason for income inequality and poverty. But why are people in poverty to begin with? So I honestly, that's going to be my life's work. I don't see myself ever doing anything different. I mean, I'm obviously have to photograph different things, but I'm always going to focus on income inequality and why that's an issue now and why it keeps persisting and why things aren't changing. So my work in some form or fashion will always reflect that.
It's interesting. I remember when you first arrived and even that first call to you about the Alexia grant, it was clear you had a mission, you had a focus, but it's increasingly become refined until your master's project, I think, is what really brought this to full fruition as a focus. Did that surprise you? I mean, the idea of, I'm a journalist, am I supposed to do everything? Or wait a minute, no, this is what matters to me.
I mean, as far as like having to do everything, like writing, photographing and everything like that, like being like a one-man team?
Well, topically everything, but also, I mean, having to also produce the great range of types of content, not just pictures file.
I mean, it didn't overwhelm me. I mean, I knew like when you start working on projects, excuse me, you have to think about what's the best way to tell this story. Is it through images? Is it through writing? Is it through photo? Is it through video? Is it just audio? Is it a combination of all of those? And I think that the best way to, and I think that's one of the best things about that I learned at Syracuse is just having an opportunity to work on all of that, because now I know what can make a project stand out is having all those elements. Because I think if I would have just focused on just straight photo for my thesis, it wouldn't be what it is now. And at the same time, like, you never know what you might be interested in. One day you could be in school wanting to be a photographer, and then you start doing audio, and then you learn down the road, like, oh, maybe I want to be a podcaster, or maybe I want to be a cinematographer. And unless you start experimenting with all of that, you're not gonna know for sure. I don't know if that answered the question or not.
It's a good answer.
Yeah, it is a good answer. And it kind of speaks to several people in the Q&A have asked this question. What were some of the biggest lessons that you learned from your time at Syracuse?
The biggest lesson I learned was that if I don't get out there and work, I'm not going to have to work. I mean, and that's basically it. I treated at Syracuse as a job, as I worked at a newspaper or a magazine, and I looked at you guys not as professors but as editors, and I'm not gonna get any feedback from you guys if you guys don't see any work from me. So the more work that I did, the more work that I got out of it, because I was able to get the feedback that I needed, and I was able to get the direction, the things that I was missing, things that I needed, things that I could slow down on doing. So, I mean, that's why I said I'm a workaholic. I just got out there and I worked. We think of work as something that's being 9 to 5, and that's not the case, because if you're telling stories on certain individuals, their lives doesn't stop after 9 to 5. They have things going on in their lives after 5 o'clock. So what are they doing after 5 o'clock? So if you want to tell a full, well-rounded story, it's not going to happen if you stop at 5 o'clock at all. So you have to go past that. I mean, if the people you're photographing are up to like 12, 1 o'clock in the morning, 2, 3 in the morning doing something that's extremely relevant to your story, you should be there. Sleep when you can. And that's one of the, I guess that's one of the biggest advice I would give to students is just don't treat this as a 9-to-5 thing. You know, like go past that. The more work you put into what you're doing, the more you're going to get out of it, and the more that your professors can guide you to where you need to be.
Can you think of any other things, Michael? Any other lessons? Any other lessons that you learned that you want to pass on?
Don't be afraid to try new things. I know this is one of the biggest things that I dealt with you with, Bruce, because I didn't want to do video at all, and you always pushed me to do video, and I'm like, I don't want to do video. So I mean, don't be afraid to try new things. I think that probably had I given opportunity to start over again, I would probably try because there's a lot of stuff that Newhouse was doing at the time. They were doing the 360 video at the time. They were doing the drone videos as well. I would probably try more different technologies because there's a whole lot more that you can do now. Especially now, like in the age now where, you know, during the pandemic where you can't really do certain things. Like I'm thinking about like, you know, I brought back 360 video now, and I'm like, well, you know, like now that we can't get inside people's homes, we could just give them a 360 video and pop that in there and have that record their lives in some kind of way that you can incorporate into your storytelling. So don't be afraid to try new things and new technologies. There's things that are coming out brand new all the time, and you know, I mean, with that also, I would also add to programs. Like I wish I would have taken After Effects a little bit more seriously instead of just doodling around in class. So that's probably, you know, just don't be afraid to try things that you're afraid to do.
So, Michael, one of the Q&A questions is, are you ever done a story? How do you know when you're done and it's ready for publication?
I mean, I don't know how to answer that. I mean, you might not know when that story is done. I mean, it could be something that needs to, you know, that could be wrapped up depending on what it is. I think back to one of my mentors, Alexia. She's working on a story for over 20 years. You know, my Black Farmers project, I spent photographing maybe about 2-3 years on it, and I don't think I'm absolutely done with it at all. I mean, I think I just scratched the surface on that story. So I think it depends on what it is that you want to work on and what it is and what that outcome of what you want that to be. That's one of the things that Mike always talked about in his classes. What do you want the outcome to be? You know, do you want to make a book? Do you want to make a website? Are you just photograph and throw images on Instagram or to try to pitch to a publication? I think that you can certainly pitch chapters of that story to different publications and have those published, but there's no reason why you can't go back and continue that. And it also depends on who the individual is. Like if you find an amazing story that has different branches of things, you can totally do that. Like with my thesis at Syracuse, there was several different branches of it. You know, I had 3 different main characters in that picture. And that led to, I look at it kind of like a spoke at a wheel, at a bicycle. It leads to different things. And one of the ways that you won't get distracted and feel like you're doing too much is just to branch out and bring in different weaves in that storytelling. I don't know if that makes sense, but you know, certain stories have different branches that you can just jump off to and then come back to the main story every once in a while. So basically, sometimes you don't know when you're done unless somebody tells you that you're done.
Hire Mike, right?
Yeah, hire Mike. He'll tell you when you're done.
I'm curious, you want to give people a sense of what you're up to now. It's brand new.
Yeah, so I recently was hired by Getty Images. I'll be working with the news division. It's my first week, so this week there's been a lot of Zoom sessions. I've done nothing but just pretty much do this. Actually, prior to this, I was getting my first lesson on how to work the systems that way I can be able to, send in images. But with the news team, I'm pretty much going to be working on straight news. I'll be based out of New York, covering New York news. But I also do have opportunity to be sent out elsewhere. It could be in the U.S., it could be in the Caribbean, it could be in Latin America, and it could be overseas in Europe, Asia, wherever basically they need me. And in a sense, it's kind of almost like working in the newspaper, except that I'm just straight working on news. And it's not, I won't necessarily be always just getting assignments, but I also have the opportunity to pitch stories as well and pitch things that I want to work on. And like one of the things that I've gotten so far, which I've been enamored by, is that they wanted me here for my vision. They've seen what I've done prior to me working at the paper and see what I've done at the paper. And then just seeing me speak the past couple of months, and they've gotten a sense of who I am as a person. So they brought me here for my vision and what I can bring to the table. I think I said, yesterday we had a company-wide meeting, and I'm not sure, they could correct me if I'm wrong on this, but it's possible that I'm like the first Black Latino hired at the news division. So I'm kind of like breaking the ceiling, shattering the glass door. Somebody yesterday has said that I'm like the Jackie Robinson of the news division there. And I'm not sure if that's the case or not, but if it is, I'm glad to kind of be kicking the door in. And I mean, everybody, it's not, the numbers are out there for, publications throughout the country. And a lot of publications, they're not diverse. And I think that's one of the biggest problems with journalism nowadays, is that there's not a lot of diversity. And it goes back to what we were talking about before. And if you don't have diverse voices on your staff, you're missing out a good portion of what America is.
I agree.
Yeah.
I'm wondering, how can academia address change? Having just passed through a master's program, been around other programs.
Have a diverse staff. That's from the get-go, hire a diverse staff, and just try to figure out a way to recruit a diverse group of students. I think that one of the things that I loved about our class, our cohort, what was it, the 15th cohort, is that we were diverse. There was we have folks from Asia, we had Black folks, we had Latino folks, we had white folks, we had women, we had men. It was a super diverse class, and I think that that's the way all classes should be reflected. And also all journalism newsrooms should look to be that way. And I think that's the reason why our cohort, why we still get along. To this day, we still speak about once or twice a week. So there needs to be a way to recruit a diverse group of students, and how that's done, I'm not exactly sure. But and maybe that's starting with reaching out to high schools and seeing who's interested in journalism. And I know that at Syracuse, there was when you guys do the fall workshop, you do partner with a high school. And I think that's amazing. I think like one of the things that when I was in Syracuse, one of the things that I did there was that I never did things at Syracuse that didn't include community. Because there's no reason why you should have a big university in your city and not have people from the city be included into what you're doing. There's no reason for that. That always annoyed me. Like when concerts happen, concerts a lot of times were always open to just people from Syracuse, from the school, but never to the community. So that always bothered me. So, you guys doing with that fall workshop there, inviting people from the community to take part in it, not only are you giving these high school students an opportunity to see what it's like to be in a school, but you're giving them a taste of what it's like to be in journalism, into something new that they might not have a chance to do. And I think that's super important.
Yeah, actually, Michael, you'd be happy to know that at least one or two of those high school students went on to study journalism and photography. So it's been great to see that. worked out.
And that's amazing. And that's also the reason why it's important to have things like the Bronx Documentary Center, because the Bronx Documentary Center, they have a space for high school students to get them engaged and teach them how to, how to be journalists and be photographers. And, at that program there, though, those kids are also taken on tours of schools and different colleges. So like having places like that and partnering with places like that is super important to help in diverse schools. And, like I never thought I would be here because my school didn't give me access to this. I learned how to be a photographer in high school. But when I went to go talk to my guidance counselor, when I talked to her about my SATs and going to schools, she flat out told me that schools wasn't, higher education wasn't for everybody, and told me to think about going to like trade schools or going to the military, So, I mean, when you have outlets when you're in high school, when you have things that can broaden your horizon and what you can do, it's amazing.
Yeah, for sure. And from there, you went into art school. One of the questions here for you is, how has your background in art photography influenced the way you approach stories as a photojournalist? And then the second half, I'm just going to give you the second half of this person's question. Also, do you think the Photo Bill of Rights will become an industry benchmark, or is the backlash against it too strong? So you can split them and then.
Well, I go back to the art. One of the very first art classes I had was drawing, and drawing let me see the world flat, if that makes sense. I could look at a 3D world and look at it as a 2D image, and a lot of times I don't look at photographs as inspiration. I look at paintings. I spend a lot of times looking at paintings. One of my favorite painters is Caravaggio. And like life imitates art, So, I mean, I think my love of art informs who I am as a photographer, because it helps me, it's helped me learn how to compose images and how to use light in a certain way. And it's helped me make my images interesting, I would say. I remember one time I had during a portfolio review, one of the first times an editor saw my Black farmers' work, the very first thing he says is, a lot of these images look like they're paintings, and that's kind of like what I strive to do.
Yeah.
I mean, when you have a successful image when your image evokes some kind of visceral emotion from somebody, and that's usually what I try to do. As far as the Bill of Rights, I think the fact that there's so much pushback and fighting right now goes to show that it's working. It's kind of like we have to, it's taken 5 to 6 years for people to understand what Black Lives Matter actually happens. And the fact that people were fighting so hard to understand what that was, it brought about a change. And I think the infighting of what certain things mean is a way that you can get to a certain center and figure out, all right, this is why people want to do that. So I think at some point it will. And I don't necessarily think that the Photo Bill of Rights as it stands right now, I don't think that it's going to be a certain stamped document. It's going to be is what it is. I'm pretty sure there's going to be amendments to it, just like our Constitution. There's amendments to our Constitution. So I'm pretty sure that's going to be a living document, and it will change as time goes along. But I think for me, I think it's a step in the right direction for a change in the way our industry works. Because when you look at the MPPA Code of Ethics, one of those things is to not cause harm to the people we're working with. We never want to harm the people that we're photographing. And I think that's one of the biggest things about the Photo Bill of Rights, is that one of the big things about it is causing harm to a certain community. We are supposed to be agents of change, and our images and our work is supposed to bring change to the world, not bring more harm to the world. If that kind of answers the question.
Yeah.
I think even categorically about the people who do get to give consent to have themselves photographed. There are people of power, there's people in government, there are people who have doors in front of them. So the idea of consent as this thing that we're would be holding up the entire debate.
Yeah, and I think part of it is that people are thinking that we're giving our First Amendment right away, and I don't think we're not. I mean, I would always fight for the First Amendment right. I think just, you know, people out there protesting have a First Amendment right, and just like I have a First Amendment right to be out there photographing. But that doesn't mean that I can't say like, hey, is it okay if I photograph you? It's nothing wrong with that. You know, this is the Voter Bill of Rights is not trying to give our First Amendment rights away.
Yeah, and there were really two parts to it. There's the asking not just permission, but having a conversation, and then helping people understand what the consequences of that might be.
Yeah. I mean, because like, you know, like I mean, as far now that I'm working with Getty, I'm no longer working for a local publication. At Getty, my images have. It's possible that my image is going to go worldwide, and everybody can see this. You know, it's not just living on the internet. You know, like a photo of mine could be the front page image to like different newspapers across the world. So I have to take that into consideration, and now I have to let people know, like, hey, this image could possibly be seen everywhere. Are you okay with that? And I don't think there's nothing wrong with that. I mean, is it going to suck if we get an amazing image and the people tell us that we can't use it? That's okay with me. You know, like in Pittsburgh, one of the things that has helped me, you know, gain trust in Pittsburgh is when people tell me I don't want to be photographed. Cool. That's fine with me, walking away and not photographing. Down the line, they've agreed to be photographed because I respected them. You know, it's just like, you're going to get respect if you give respect. You know, and I've been able to get more trust and let people let me into their lives by just accepting the fact that they didn't want to be photographed the first or second time. You know, by the third, fourth time around, they see you again, they'll let you photograph them.
Michael, the top of the list here for questions is, how do you stay objective while photographing stories with issues that you are really passionate about? Where is the line between journalist and activist for you?
I mean, if you are, let's say, I mean, first of all, there's no way that you can be objective in certain stories. I mean, if you're choosing to work on a certain project and a certain story, it's because you're already passionate and care about that project. So you're already not being objective because that's something you care about. Like me, one of the things I care about is social inequality in America. Does that mean that I can't cover certain things because that's what I'm passionate about? Am I being objective by not doing that? I mean, it's. I mean, I don't know. I mean, I think the best way that I can answer that question is to go back and look for Wesley Lowery's interview on Objective that they did a couple of weeks ago on New York Times, because he answers that perfectly well. It's hard to not be objective in this industry, and I think without getting, you guys are pushing me in a dicey position, man, because I can't talk about certain things that I want to talk about. Yeah, I mean, like, I don't know. I don't know how to answer that without getting myself in trouble.
Well, so Michael, I mean, you have told me, but I think you should tell everybody. Like, there's a couple of questions about Pittsburgh in specific, and
yeah,
you ought to probably address why you're not speaking to that directly.
Okay. I have a prepared statement. I was prohibited from covering the most important civil rights events of my lifetime, and I couldn't continue to work under such restrictions. And you guys can make your own conclusions why I decided to leave the paper from that. And that's my prepared statement on that. I mean, I can speak about how I felt about doing that. I mean, like, the most important thing in my lifetime that it can affect me as a human being, because I'm a Black man in this country, is happening right across my eyes, and I have to sit back and just watch it on Twitter happening and not being there contributing to that. And that was tough. It's still tough for me now. I mean, we're a month into this and I have no images to show for that. And that's kind of where I can just leave it there.
But you have the opportunity now to re-enter.
I do, but now for me, I want to think of different angles to tell the story, not just being physically out there covering the marches and the protests. So that's where I'm heading now. I have stories in mind that I'm going to be working on, that I'm already like weaving, that shall be coming soon. They were in the works before I even left Pittsburgh. I was already finding the sources and finding the stories. So it's gonna happen. They're there.
That seems to be one of your skills, or just reflection of your personality, to be able to connect with people. Is that something if you don't feel like you're there, how do you get there?
And that's pretty much getting out of your comfort zone and talking to people, and just, I mean, it could be about anything that you want to talk to them about, and just breaking that barrier. Excuse me. Yeah, I mean, you just have to not be afraid to talk to people. I mean, like the second part, we're photojournalists, and the second part of that word is journalist, and that's journalist. You have to talk to people, and if you don't like to talk to people, like, you're kind of in the wrong profession, unfortunately. I mean, yes, we are photographers and we do photograph, but there's more to our work than just snapping a photo. You have to talk to people, and like, you can't give context to a story or a photo without having spoken to the individual you're photographing. And you have to find a way to get out of that. Like, I remember when I was TAing for David Sutherland, one of his first assignments that he gives to new students is to go out and make 20 portraits of 20 strangers. If you're afraid to talk to people, go out there and just make 20 photos of 20 strangers. And the more you do that, the more comfortable you get with talking to people who you don't know.
That's neat.
So Michael, going back a little bit to that, because we're still getting questions about Pittsburgh a little bit, and
yeah.
So everybody's clear. Michael had to sign something that basically said he wasn't going to talk about it, okay, as part of the buyout. So he's not going to answer specific questions. But what would be really useful is if you could give advice to, say, graduating seniors or graduate students who are heading out into the industry and might wind up in the same kind of situation. What advice would you give to them?
Don't be afraid to speak out. I mean, I was talking to my mom a couple of days ago. She was telling me that my dad would be proud of where I'm at right now. And part of that is because he always said that I should be a lawyer, because I used to always argue with him. And she pretty much said that, like, my arguing with people and my speaking out and not staying silent pretty much got me to where I'm at right now. We're in this business because we want to speak out and, and document injustices that are happening to other people. There's no reason why you can't speak about injustices that are happening to you. Was I afraid to speak out? I was, because, this is my job and I could be blackballed. Was it the right thing to do? Yeah. I'm not saying go out and be a troublemaker. Like, I didn't do what I did to go out and to be a troublemaker and to get my name out into the world. I mean, trust me, like, I didn't want to be famous. I don't know if I'm famous, but I didn't want to be famous. I like people knowing what my images were, not knowing what I looked like. But now people know what I look like, and I'm kind of like, feel weird about that. But if you feel, as a human being, if you feel something needs to happen, then I say do it. And you know that, you get that feeling, like, you get that feeling. I don't know if I answered that correctly or not, or good. Yeah.
Yes, sure. I mean, it's advice that you're giving, but I mean, and you can expand that out to just advice you would give to anybody graduating. What are things, and I think you've already spoken to different points, one of them being work hard. Like,
yeah, I mean, that's the biggest thing, work hard. And I think one of the what I would say, what's the word I'm looking for? One of the mistakes I made when I graduated from school and I moved to New York and I tried to freelance, is that I was like, oh, my work is out there. My work is on Instagram. People know who I am. The work is going to come to me. That's not the case. That's not how it works. The work is not going to come to you. Like you have to get out there and not only make those connections with editors and build those relationships, but you got to get out there and find those stories and find stories that you can pitch to publications. And you have to consistently do that. Don't sit around and wait for people to come to you, because that's not how it works. I almost left this business because I had that mentality that work would come to me, and that wasn't the case. I mean, luckily I'm still here. But if I had to do this all over again, I would probably be more proactive with what I was doing. I would go back to being how I was in college, where I was constantly working. That would be the biggest thing I would change, and the biggest advice I would give to people is get out. Your work effort that you had in college, make that the same work ethic you have when you leave college, and be proactive and network and meet people.
Curious if you're optimistic. Kind of hate that word, but
optimistic about the world and where we're heading.
And the profession.
I mean, it's yes and no. I think one of the biggest things that was bothering me when I got that job at Getty is that not only was I leaving to a good job, but my colleagues that also took the buyout, I wasn't sure where they're going. Not only that, but I still have colleagues who are still in Pittsburgh working. When it's not just them, there's journalists being laid off all across the country. I mean, this pandemic has hit every industry hard. So, I mean, I hope that things go back to normal and people are back to work, and, publications are accepting pitches and publications are accepting freelancers. I don't know how to answer that, because I don't know what this pandemic is looking like. Like right now, things seem to be going south everywhere right now, and we don't know when this thing is going to end. I'm back in New York, where it was the epicenter of the country, and it's getting better now. But who's to say that this can get worse again here in New York again? I don't know. I don't know how to answer that. I mean, I'm hoping. I mean, I love journalism. Like I read. If I'm not reading books, I'm reading stuff from other publications. So I never want to be in a world where there isn't any journalism. So I really, truly do hope that things get back to normal and things, people are out there doing work.
You just said hopeful. That's probably a better word.
Yes.
Yeah.
The last thing, Michael, it's interesting, along with hopeful, is someone asked, Michael, you clearly have a moral compass. Who influenced you the most to bring you this gift? And I think it's interesting for everybody to know that your family, every single person has served in the military or is a police officer, except for you, right?
Yeah, I'm the black sheep of the family.
But you're out there telling these great stories. Do you want to answer his question?
I mean, I think I would probably say my mom. Like I have my mom's heart. I have my dad's liver. We drink a lot, but I have my mom's heart, and she's an angel. She loves people, and she loves, like this lady's in church. She's going crazy right now because she can't be in church because of COVID. So like, I think that's where I get my compassion and my love for people, from her. But it's also, I think that one of the things that has made me this way is that I've been fortunate enough to travel the country and to meet different people. And what that has allowed me to do is to see that everybody's the same. Everybody's dealing with the same issues, but we're just focused on different things. And it's hard for people to see that everybody's unfortunately going through the same exact things because of things being politicized. And I think that, another advice I would give to people is travel as much as you can and to meet different people. When you stay in your bubble and where you are, you're only going to know what you know until you start to branch out and meet different people and interact with different people and see different things. That's when your personality and who you are is going to grow. And I think that's what happened to me.
Great. Well, thank you, Michael. We are just on the 1 o'clock hour here, and I want to thank you for taking time to speak with us, Michael. Mike Davis, thanks for co-hosting this, and we're just appreciate all our alum, our friends, our current students who have joined us today. Thank you for making Newhouse a wonderful place to work, to study, and to go out and tell stories from. Michael, you shared your heart with us, and we appreciate that. Thank you.
Thank you.
Have a great day, everybody.
Yeah, wait, one last quick thing. For those who asked questions that we didn't get to, if you want to just shoot me an email, send me a message on Instagram. I'll be more than happy to answer that for you guys.
Great. Thank you, Michael.
Super. It's good to see you, Michael.
Likewise. Bye-bye.
Take care, everybody. Bye-bye.